Environmental degradation is an issue that's really important in the global community today. Dr. Cruz is with me again to discuss some of the challenges we face when it comes to the global environment. So we have a lot of concerns in this issue area, Dr. Cruz, clean water, clean air, obviously issues of pollution in general, rainforest and deforestation, protecting the ozone, how that relates to climate change, which leads to desertification, melting ice, rising sea levels, rising temperatures, and the impact that this has on our biodiversity, on the well-being of humans, as well as animals and various species that we're potentially killing off with all of this climate change and environmental concerns. There are those, of course, that also say that environmental problems are really not problems. These are naturally occurring activities, and that if you look at the long history of planet Earth, you see periods of warming and cooling. So what are we to make of that? Are these really challenges? I mean, is this something we should do something about? Maybe let's just start there.
Well, I think that most of the studies do show that there is some warming going on, that the environment is being affected, and that it probably is due to humans, or at least the process is being sped along by our activities. But even if our activities are not creating these problems, we still need to pay attention to them because they are having a great effect on humankind. If we think about water, the first one that you mentioned there is a lack of clean water around the world. It's affecting all sorts of people that could potentially, and we're seeing it in some areas, potentially lead to droughts, lead to violence, lead to conflict. So in some ways, who's causing this environmental change is less important as the effects of the environmental change.
And then from the effects, like how we address it, right?
Yes.
How do we address global resources in a way where we divvy them up in a more fair manner? Is this what you're talking about in terms of the response to global environmental challenges? Because clearly what happens in one country isn't just confined in that one country. Water, air is polluted in one part of the world. It has an impact on the rest of the world. This is definitely an issue that would qualify as a global concern. So yet how do we solve that together and collectively?
Well, exactly that way. As you said, it's a global concern. We must solve it collectively. These are not things that stay nicely within state boundaries. These are not areas where sovereignty is going to rule. We need to work with people around the world. And there are a number of ways that countries are attempting to do this through various protocols, through the UN, through regional organizations, and those sorts of things. But when you're dealing with countries who have their own perspectives, their own ideas, this becomes very difficult. Thinking about development in the United States, for example, we went through an industrial revolution, as did Western Europe about 100 years ago, and we really hurt the environment in doing that. We now have countries, many of them in the developing world, the global south, that are attempting to go through this development process and are taking steps that are also hurting the environment. And so it becomes very difficult when the West, who is already developed, says you can't do these things to the developing world. There's a little bit of a hypocrisy that comes across there. So that is very challenging.
Yeah, definitely. Environmental issues are connected to much greater issues of economy, security, and human and species well-being. So very challenging to face. Not sure that we've figured out exactly how we're going to address these concerns. So students, what do you think? Are environmental concerns really concerning to you today? And what would you do about them?